Part 2 in the series celebrating the games we love. Or rather that I love, but I assume you do too since you clicked the video. This is the best thing about Borderlands.
So you want to hear the story, eh?
Don't worry, I won't try and continue with that Marcus impression. Off now to Pandora, tearing through the rugged back roads of a corporately ravaged wasteland inhabited by vile psychopaths, feral alien dogs, and the worst threat to all civilization, midgets. Sorry, no, tinks, apparently. That's a phrase we're using now? The original entry into the series was released way back in 2009 for the PS3, Xbox 360, PC, and even Mac a year later. And it was developed by Gearbox Software. Since then, 3 further mainline entries were brought out: Borderlands 2, the pre-sequel, and eventually Borderlands 3 in 2019. I describe the series as a first-person shooter that doesn't take itself too seriously, sometimes even to a fault.
Even though I'm totally unarmed, can't let them know you're afraid and totally defenseless, bro. Bandit life!
Characters are kooky, quests are wacky, and every inch is crammed with zany pop culture references. Unlike typical shoot-em-ups, Borderlands presents its players with more diverse options for playstyle. Built upon the foundations of role-playing games, you'll start each playthrough by selecting one of 4 character archetypes, known as Vault Hunters. Each hunter has their own special ability called an action skill, and their own unique skill tree that can be spec'd to give the player advantages, and sometimes even disadvantages.
The pain goes here!
The skill trees can be respec'd pretty easily, allowing for adaptation to the acquisition of new gear, or just the desire to switch up how the player wants to approach things. The series has certainly garnered its own cult following of dedicated fans who have arguably had to put up with some ups and downs over the years. While the original and its sequel were pretty universally well received, the pre-sequel and entry number 3 were much more contentious. Sometimes as a result of the world design, but especially with 3, as a product of an aging sense of humour that was perfect for the culture of the late noughties, less so now. But even in 3, the gameplay was chunky, customizable and addictive, so I'd still recommend it, with some caveats. As for me, well, this series holds a very special place in my heart. It was, believe it or not, the first series I ever played through on a PlayStation console. Having grown up as a Nintendo lad, not really having the disposable income for an additional console, and even going through a long phase in my early 20s of not playing any video games at all, I was touching a lot of grass in those days. But as I watched my housemate play through Borderlands 1 on his newly bought PS3, I couldn't resist joining in. Further entries in the series managed to successfully refine the tone and gameplay, which is not what can be said of all franchises. The sweet spot is still Borderlands 2, but I believe each game has its own merits. So hi, I'm Dunks, and you're not, but don't let that hold you back in life. This is the second entry into a little mini-series where I get to just gush about games that I love. The first was on Monster Hunter, so please do be going back and checking that out. Now, you could write 5-hour retrospectives about any game, but that's not my current plan and I don't really have the time for it either. So I thought I'd just pick out one thing, or rather, a few things, about a game that I love and just have fun with it. So what about you and your fine self? Since I'm assuming you clicked on this video because you already love Borderlands anyway. Let me know down in the comments below what your favourite thing is and get a discussion going. Right, let's get into it. So, 2009, the Xbox 360 and PS3 era. What does history tell us? It's in that point in time where HD was starting to be thrown out, even if it wasn't actually realised. In the pursuit of gritty, realistic graphics, everything was very, very, very brown. Fallout 3 was released just a year prior. I'm pretty sure that game had some green in it in at least one location. but everything else was dirt-tinged grayscale. Originally, Borderlands was going to follow along with the gritty, dirty, realistic look. But somewhere along the development timeline, they made a very wise decision. Cell shading, the controversy of Wind Waker, that in the end made games of this style way more capable of weathering the storms of time. Realism is somewhat of a fool's errand, often requiring expensive development and hardware just to be rendered obsolete in a few years once new technologies advance. So Gearbox went their own way. Well, at least in terms of art style. The first game is still very, very beige. But that's okay, it was a sign of the times. And since Borderlands 1 was relatively succinct, it would take most people at least a few playthroughs before the need for more visual stimulus would become apparent. The later games would go on to include snowy tundras, violet temples, and even nuclear green caverns. But it's all a testament to the choice of art style that you can still visit these locations some 15 years later and it all at least works. And developers have managed to make games in 1080p now. Yay! But that's not maybe the best thing about Borderlands, as it is perhaps its most iconic. What else is iconic about the series? Ah yes, the guns. The billions of procedurally generated armaments that come flying out of the carcasses of your fallen adversaries. The truth is that, with the exception of the ever-coveted legendaries, most of the loot does conform to certain patterns, which is fair. Obviously, the first entry laid the foundations for this system. Weapons were made by different in-universe manufacturers which had their own general strengths and tendencies. Well, sort of. In theory, anyway. In practice, it was a lot more blurry. Sure, you'd see a vaguely more elemental focus on Maliwan weapons, but Dahl versus Jacobs versus Torg. But Borderlands 1 walked so that entry number 2 could run. Now there is much greater delineation between manufacturers. Torg weapons are exclusively explosive, with slow-moving projectiles. Jacob's weapons are never automatic and require you to fan the trigger. Dahl are all about burst fire, which I hate, but you do you, boo. Then, in Borderlands 3, manufacturers' guns even fire differently and have specific secondary fire modes. And brother, that's all just the weapons. There are grenade mods and artifacts. This series is constantly throwing variety at you and asking you to try something new. But again, that's not quite the best thing about it for me, but it does lead perfectly into it. So then, let's do this. Okay, so you got a great gun. That don't impress me much. Let's take that a step further. Each character has 3 skill trees, which can be easily respecced at certain revisitable locations. If the action skills are the character's muscle and bones, then these skill trees are more like their DNA. As you venture along with your chosen hunter, you'll become intimately acquainted with each and every one of these skills. They form the fabric of how each character interacts with the combat, and how you choose to express that. All characters can use all weapons, but their skills are what take it to the next level. It could be as simple as, got a cool fire gun? Let's buff that elemental damage. Or it could be as ridiculously convoluted as, let's set yourself on fire so that your defense can increase and cause you to shoot fireballs. Krieg was quite an interesting character, wasn't he?
Stop talking to me!
But even from the first entry into the series, the devs had the clarity of mind to take it one step even further. I think we're at 2 steps further at this point. Now hear me out. In real life, every object has what is called a natural frequency. And when that object is exposed to an external vibration that matches that frequency, the object will tend to respond with motion. The external energy transfer synchronizes with the object's natural frequency, and the effects can be dramatic. This effect is called resonance. I think my car has a natural frequency with the note G, because when I play music in that key it tends to rattle a lot. Probably nothing to worry about, right? Back to Borderlands. Each skill has a limit, but what if those limits could be broken? Enter my favourite part of the Borderlands franchise, a little item called the class mod. Take certain groups of skills, give them a common theme, create synergy, and let those skill limits break. The class mods are our external vibration, and the skills are our Vault Hunter's natural frequency. We get resonance. Run at sonic speeds across the map with breakneck Banshee Maya, or have an unlimited mecha marathon with eternal flame Moes. Get more accurate SMGs with accident. Okay, yeah, maybe they aren't all winners, but you know how I know that this is my favourite thing about the series? Whenever I start a new character or a new playthrough, I can't wait for those new class mod drops. What cool new shiz am I gonna do with this? And it all boils back down to that fundamental system, the core identity of Borderlands: roleplay. What character you choose will set some limits by virtue of what skills and class mods are available to you. But those limits are just the borders of a canvas, and it's up to you to apply the paint. Mix in the need to adapt to the ever-changing gear, and you got yourself an almost creative expression. Class mods take your designs and make them burst with colour. In Borderlands 3, we got our greatest iteration of the class mod system to date. Skills can be activated without the need to spec into them, and we get a wide variety of legendary class mods that gave us some insane passive benefits. I wonder what we'll get in Borderlands 4. So yeah, there it is, the class mod system. My favourite thing about Borderlands. And, like I asked earlier, what's your favourite thing? Let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like, as that's really encouraging to me as a small content creator. Really good to know that a video is well received. And if you're part of any online communities who'd also love this video, please share it with them. And lastly, in the build up to Borderlands 4, there's plenty more Borderlands content coming, and the next part in this series. Probably going to be on Hollow Knight or Outer Wilds. So if you're interested in that, hit subscribe and you'll know when those videos drop. Well, thank you so much for watching, I really hope you enjoyed that. Take care, have a great week whatever you're doing, and I'll catch you on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah.